Good evening, Wendy. Are you in the house tomorrow? Good evening, Colin. Good. I'll probably, I might pop in on the way in. Two talking and only 3 and 8 watching. 3 talking, 8 watching. Good evening, Derek. Barbara, good evening to you. Tracy, good evening. Glennis, good evening. Nice to have you all on board. We shall crack on very shortly. I do hope everybody is or has had a good weekend. Everybody's safe and healthy. That's the main thing. I don't know where everybody is from, but although the UK is ending its official lockdown tomorrow, not tomorrow, Wednesday, we're still very much in lockdown in the southeast. We're in the highest tier, unfortunately. Although I don't know how much of import it is in terms of numbers. It's certainly not bad all over Kent, but we all seem to be into the same boat, as it were. Right, okay, let's crack on. So I have not done a thing to this little cup all week. I've let it just dry, and I just wanted to see where I went with it tonight. Now, it's not going to get finished tonight, I can assure you of that, and I have no plans to speed it through to make that happen. It would be pointless exercise, and I just want to bring some of the values up. Some of the lights around here I think can be a little more yellow, a little brighter, and we'll try and bring this up to almost finished state, I think, as best I can. And then I will work on some of this area here and then bring some of this up. Not all of it. I shall bring some more of this up later on. And if there is time, we'll just keep going until we run out of time. Right, Glennis, we're in lockdown in Northamptonshire. Oh, that's where you are. Okay, that's, yeah. So you're in tier 3 on Wednesday, the same as us? Teresa, good evening. Thank you very much, Teresa. Appreciate that. Oh dear, I need to get to bed earlier. Right, okay, let's crack on. So I tend to start working with smaller brushes and to this point. And so I'm just going to bring out a little bit of fine detail liquid, and I'm just going to mix up a little bit. I've got a little bit of a colour that I don't always use, well, certainly not a colour that's in the Michael Harding range. It's this one here, which is Juan Brilliant from Winsor & Newton. I'll just put a little tab of it there, and that is It's a great colour, I have to say. I'm going to put a little bit of orange to that. Not much. I think it's way too much already, so I need to come back out of that, take a little bit off to one side, bring a little bit of yellow into it, and just play around with these values for a few minutes. A little bit of zinc white just to take it down without being so overpoweringly bright white, just to take it down a smidge and see how that colour looks. I think it's looking a little bit of bright. I'm going to put a yellow, I keep mixing around. I'm putting some oxide of yellow into that now, just to shift it a little further until I'm starting to come this way a little bit. You'll see me appear in a minute behind the picture. There we are. Let's see how that goes. So I've got several parts of colour, and if I just move the picture away for a second, just not that one. Let's get the right picture. There you go. Let's move that. You can see how I have mixed from here the orangey and the Joan Brilliant, and coming with a bit more yellow, oxide of yellow, more whites in there, so you can get to see how that looks. Let's try and bring that a little bit so that you get to see more of the palette. I'm not quite sure if I do that, then you're not going to see. Just trying to figure it out. Bear with me, peeps. There you go. Maybe you can see a little bit of the palette mixing now. The leopard, the tiger, cheetah cub. Come on. Sue, good evening to you. Ben, good evening to you, sir. Right, okay, let's get on. My geography is terrible, so I'm not even going to comment on half of those little chats. We're just going to get into our little cat and put some lights in. Now I am working and testing, so I'm just putting in a few little glaze colours just to lighten up some of the fur. I'm using a fairly thick number 2 rigger. I'm putting a bit of fluid to it so that it will come off the brush quite reasonably easily. And I'm trying to literally draw the fur in very, very fine hairs as such, but I'm not trying to paint individual ones. One hair, in a sense, stands up for several. And I'm just putting a lighter value in right now, and they will come even lighter as we go on. So I'm just putting in 1 or 2, and then I can come back in with some even brighter ones where they need it in certain places. So this is yet another layer, and I'm not using each and every piece over those are already in. And put a little bit of warmth into some of these, a bit more orange in a few of these, just so they come up and they glow. That's 1 or 2, not too much. Could do with a bit more yellow in it. So I'm going to put a little bit more oxide of yellow in. It kills it off with the white a little bit. I'm just going to come down to a slightly smaller rigger just to put some very fine hairs out on this top side here. See, there's too much oil. You see that? When that does that, it's just too much oil, too much mixture going on. So just come down with a little bit of zest. It's a thinner and not an oil. Whereas the liquid's got more oil into it. It just gives a different effect. Now we can create a finer line with a bit more of a solvent in it, as opposed to an English distilled terps is a great one, because that is a natural product, and I really ought to think about using a bit more of that in my painting. I gotta say, I don't ordinarily. I have got loads of it, and I don't get it out enough to use. But it's a shame, really, because it is a really great substance, and it's natural, and I love the smell. Sniff that stuff all day long. Anyway, I digress. Let's just keep carrying on, and it's trying to build this as fast as I can. And I probably am going at the sort of speed that I'll probably do naturally anyway, so I'm not racing. Good idea, Ben. I didn't notice that. And I can make it a tad bigger. And I can pop myself out the way too. How's that? Make myself a little smaller. That won't matter. Okay, now I can't give you all the palette, but you can certainly see the first few colours up to my first blue. And I'll try and keep as many mixes as I can into the image as well. Good thinking, Ben. Alright, I'm just going to come around here and put some bright lights and tapping as I go to suggest the broken hair, and you can see that almost looking down at the hair, so we are literally drawing with a brush, and that's how I view it, almost like drawing with a brush, little taps, little marks, using taps of the brush, and as I do it I sort of push it down ever so slightly like that. Not as exaggerated as that, but you can see little taps. And that's how I work, or that's how I'm working with this one, certainly. Just giving that ear a lovely rim. Just come back into here. There we are. Now here I do tend to work from the top to the bottom, unlike other times, because obviously I don't want to work down here and disturb this. Is that how I meant? I didn't want to disturb paint here and disturb it by painting here afterwards. I think I knew what I meant. Right, I'm just going to put one or two somewhat lighter hairs to begin the idea of the way that the hair is in the ear. And I'm almost gently stroking, caressing the surface, picking out little bits of paint and just caressing the surface with it. Little taps here because the hair is not as long and it's turning around, so it's a little bit more clumpy in the edges of the ear, and it's a little bit warmer, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange colour in here just to warm that section through there. Like so, I bring that all the way down this side in here. And it's all by degrees. Pick up a little bit more orange, some of the nice warm strokes of fur in here. Lovely ear hair. And let it start to build. Like so. Okay. Check all the time diagonals, where the hair's emanating from, and try and replicate that. I think I didn't think my drawing was out. I think that I got a little bit too high with this hair here. There should have been a little bit more showing there. It's not a problem, no great shakes. Just tapping a few smaller end-on bits here. Trying to recreate the depth as they disappear from view, right in the dark parts in here. Almost just glancing the canvas with enough to leave and deposit the faintest trace of line, which is quite warm. Keith, good evening to you. Okay, that's good. Now, Keith, and is Judy with us? I don't think she is. Wendy, you know already. Sue, yes, Sue, I couldn't get hold of you today. I got problems with my internet bouncing emails back, so I was doing it off of Messenger, and of course I haven't got you on a Messenger. So Sue, for your information and confirming with Keith, because I think I did message you, that of course you're aware that we won't be teaching at the gallery this side of Christmas, certainly. I do hope to look at it again in the early part of January and get back in as we normally do in the first week or so of January, but that will depend on how Christmas and lockdown goes. But certainly anything of the class will be carried over to the early part of next year, and we'll come back in then, I hope. So that means I won't be emailing you now tomorrow. So you are now been made aware. Alright, let's just carry forward. Nice to bring up this patch of fur in the ear and get this ear to a much closer state of finish. Some longer ones, and look at those where they just trail down. You haven't got to repeat and get everyone in the right place. You're looking for an overall look and style. I think there needs to be a bit more light and yellow, a little bit of lemon into that. Pale that off with some titanium white now. Take that down there, maybe a little bit more of the other colour back in, that Jean Brilliant. Pale it off somewhat further. Gives us a nice light colour. I might need to put a bit of fluid to that. And just look in here and just come back with a slightly brighter mark here where that ear and that little crack or shape in the ear form. That comes across a little straighter like that. Now that does look a little bit on the light side, so I'm just going to tone that back a little bit. Not like that. I'm going to put a little bit of green to one part of that, just to take that down and cool it off a little further. And around the outside, give that lovely shape there. There we are. Now I'm going to come in and over some of these and just give them a third or fourth layer of colour. Just to, especially in here, we've got this lovely, really light patch. I'm going to suggest that now. Lovely variations of the fur, just all caught up there and ruffling, catching the light like so, and one or two other marks, just bring that fur back out. Okay, some of that to come up in here. Not so yellow on this part, so let's just bring them back in. A little bit light, but not as yellow. Bring that through there. Play around with these couple of pieces coming this way. Individual little marks, not tons of marks, just the individual little stroke to suggest there's a curvature and a change of direction of the fur. And one or two bits coming this way as well. Okay, where are we, Keith? Cheers, Paul. That's a bitty, but we're in a strange time. They're getting stranger. Absolutely. Yes, you would, absolutely. And of course, it's not a solvent in the same way as Zest It, so it does have a few benefits over it. Nice being a natural product, Wendy. Right. Just going to bring some of that into the start of the face here, because I can see one or two areas. And I don't ever want to replace one part over another. They're merely light parts over the darker parts, or the slightly darker parts that before them. So you get a nice depth of fur going on. And hopefully that works here. Now there is I'm going to smudge a little bit there and in there, because you can't see absolute detail, and I had just too much hair absolutely depicted, and I just wanted to knock that back a little bit. Like so, and maybe a little more down there into that part there, and that does get a little greener, a little cooler, a little less in there. That works. Okay. Right, let's move on. Let's bring some of that cooler colour into one or two of these marks here. Now this is where I put the lights in, and I'm doing this ahead of time really, but I'm trying to show you how you sort of bring these wonderful stray light hairs that are catching that light and sun in and make them become part of. And it's a little bit more white into some of that green just to lessen that off a little bit more. Maybe a little bit of that green in there for the next part, not necessarily straight off. And I sort of cross hairs over hairs and move things about in front of, all this sort of thing. Try and vary the marks so that you do not just simply cover up existing marks. That will waste of time. But I'm just gently putting in subtle. You see me go down, and the same old way that I normally do is I tap and drag, and that's little hops in there, but taps and drags. One or two lights coming across the darks like so, so that the darks are there, but they sort of get bits broken over them. I'll only do so far around the top of this head and try and cover more areas, then I can either carry on this next week or end it for you guys and just finish it in my own time. Okay, a bit more light into here. It's all by degrees. It's like cooking with salt in your dinner. You create it by degrees. Now I'm going to put in some green and a little bit of orange. See how that dirties up like it does. I'm going to put some yellow into that too. And that makes a really grungy colour. Like so. And hopefully you can see that very off mustard colour. I'm not sure if I want it all that colour yet. I'm just going to test it in one or two places. That's not so bad actually at the moment. We'll keep an eye on it as we go. Looking for the direction of the hairs coming down this way a little bit more. I don't want it overly yellow, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. So just checking those colours again, and I'm going to put a little bit of blue into there. Technically that will turn it more green, but hopefully I can bring that back with a little bit of red into the blue and just shift it down a gear from the green using the complementary. So I'm going to check that again, and I quite like that. It's working nicely with some of these reddier parts down here. So we're going to use that as a bit of sort of semi-shade colour. Bring that all the way down through to the eye almost. So we've introduced a yellower colour over the warmer colour. And in certain parts it can be a little darker, a little bit bluer, but really not too much. I think that's probably a little too much if I'm honest with you. But it's not. I'm not going to try and get rid of it. I don't need to. I just come over with some other stuff in here and look at the way that that will just suddenly start to disappear. A little bit warmer maybe. Maybe a little yellower. Almost mixing this on the paper or on the canvas as such. Okay. Did I see Leora's name there? Luke, good evening to you. That's fine. Nice to have you here, mate. Leora, good evening to you. Not a problem. Glad to have you on board. Your grand's asking me, Luke, why you are late. Please answer her. Oh, Leora, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Thank you so much. All helps. All goes into the pot to carry on working and creating more. So it's very, very kind. Appreciate it. Okay, right. Let's carry on and let's get some lights in as we descend down towards the eye. I am tapping around. A lot of this little baby fur is unlike the parent's fur. It's quite sort of all scrunchy and all mingly. It looks like he's had a bad hair day. He's been scrapping around with the siblings in the bush, and yeah, he's just sort of having fun, but the hair is all over the show. And that's great. There's no wrong with that. I want to put some darks. There's a few darker flecks, and I use a little bit of the orange. To that, I'm putting in a bit of a cooler Venetian red, Indian red, just to punch in a few suggested darker areas that could be, may even be a little bit of blue into that. It's too much. Come back a little bit more red. Just taps, little suggestions that there could be the odd darker spot appearing in and around those areas. Don't overdo it. No need to overdo that. Okay, you can always add to that if you need to further on. So let us carry on, bringing a few around. Now do not go over and wipe out those little flecks you just put in, because otherwise no point in putting them in the first place. Check some of the values and also keep an eye on where this hair is going from and to. Just keep a check on it, a little side glance to the reference to keep an idea of where it's all coming from, so that you got the length and the flow of the hair in about the right place. Now some of this is laying over, and there is some of this going down and underneath. So it's just a little bit screwy in terms of hairdo. But we all have had bad hair days. I should know, I do have quite a few of them. So I'm just coming back around here and just playing around with some of these values. And you see that I have been predominantly painting with the same brush now all the way. I don't mind that. And I think that one of the reasons why I use it so much is for doing lots of wildlife like this. I just get so lost in creating the fur and the hair, especially on big cats, that I forget to put that brush down. I'm going to come back in with a bit of orange and a little bit of the red mix that I was using just now, just to deepen some of these off against the cooler greens underneath it. So we put the green in, but we've got a very subtle dark. In terms of these, it's darker, orangey colour, reddier colour coming back into this shape and form here. There's a lot of that missing, unlike my piece of painting that gave it a lot more. So we're going to make that reduce down a little bit. Then we can put a couple of stray dark hairs in just to make it happen. And a few warmer orangey ones as well, will not hurt. Like so. Now we are starting to get close to detail with the eye. So I'm just trying to finish that mark off there. And it may be that when you look at this in the cold light of day that you realise you need to put in some other values just to bring up the hair. Maybe a little dull in one place or too light in another, and you have to make a few adjustments. Nothing wrong with that. But the idea with this is that you're able to do that. There's no problems with that. I'm just going to come in here and put a couple of these lighter marks in through here. And hopefully every time you tap this, then you're just bringing it a little closer to life. Just making everything just a little more real than it was 2 or 3 brush marks earlier. I put a little bit of cooler green bit too yellow, a little bit of that lovely turquoise into that. Just as it comes down here. And here I'm just going to suggest one or two very subtle hairs that are coming over the eye, layering over there. That got a little bit too much oil or solvent, so just either take that off like so, take it back out, come back in with a fresh mix, make sure you haven't got too much, and do it again, not a problem. Okay, that comes down to the corner of the eye there and gives way to some of the darks into the corner around here, so come back in with that. Maybe if you need to get a little bit darker, a little bit cooler, put some of those in there. Okay, a little bit of umber. That's not umber. That's umber. I was in the wrong pile. Okay, so let's just take that out. Give that a little bit of umber now. Take the excess off into a piece of tissue and just come back in, and one or two darker tweaks in here will sort that out like that. Good job we know you, Keith. Ah, dear, like it. And just don't make me laugh, I'm concentrating. Just a few tweaks down here now, and I'm not saying that this part is actually finished, I'm just saying it's a lot closer to a finish than it was. So I'm going to come back in here now, put one or two very subtle little marks into this dark area like so, just little highlights. You don't want to paint over everything that's already there. These are just like little bits coming across and tapping. You can still see through them. That's the whole idea. You can still see through them. And you're going to have some more orangey ones, maybe a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange. Let's see where that is. And just come back in with some a little bit warmer than that dark. So that dark is nice, but let's come in now, give that a fresher warmth with a little bit of yellowy orange in there. And if you want more orange, you can grab some more orange to that. If you want it a little cooler, put a little bit of zinc white to that. Now I know, now don't get me wrong, I know in America it's very, very hard to get hold of zinc white, because I know a lot of American artists prefer not to use zinc white because of the potential cracking further on. But I don't think, if you're using it fairly thinly, as I'm doing here, you will never have a problem with cracking. In all my years of using zinc white, I have never had any client come back to me and say, your painting has cracked through, can you deal with it? Of course I would if that happened, but I can assure you it's never happened. So I'm not saying such calls are uncalled for. Of course, it's been proven over years that it can happen, but I'm saying that in this country we're still able to buy zinc white, and I'm very glad of that. It's a very good mixing white. Put a bit more blue turquoise with that there, that little bit of yellow. Just take that to the cooler color. Just come into this little section here, just tap in a bit of information to suggest that color is coming up into the orange color. And just bring it up a little bit more, and if you want to, you can make that even a little paler and less green coming this way. And what happens is that when the hair starts in here, it radiates out. And do that the wrong way. It radiates out like that, like a rosette. A little bit of yellowy orange coming back into here. That's nice. Using some of those same colours, I think, just to warm one or two areas up in here. Just a little tap. You can't actually see the hairs I'm putting in with this. They are just merely taps to the odd single hair, and the brain will start to pick up those beautiful warmer colours, and it will sort of translate the whole scene for you as you watch it and as you look at it. And take one or two in here as well. Case of looking all the time and just seeing where you need to bounce little bits of colour here, little bits there. Not too loud, not too quiet. Trying to put them into the right place. I know that sounds obvious. I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I mean. You're trying to, see where things need to be lighter or darker, warmer or cooler, accordingly. And that's a constant thing. You never stop. You're just constantly looking at a little bit of white I picked up on there. Just going to come in with not white. That was the undertone colour. I'm going to come in with a very similar colour is to this. Is to start picking up this little eye stripe and just giving it a bit more light. I didn't go straight in with light before because I didn't know how much I needed. Where are we? Read the comments. Thanks, Leora. No, not so good an idea. Yeah, lead white is impossible to get really in any country, and that is totally due to obviously health issues. You are allowed to buy it if you're an art restorer, but that is only under a license, and you can't get it otherwise. There was a chappie importing it from the US last year, and he got shut down by the British government in the end. He was selling it. I think one or two of us managed to get a hold of a few tubes. I also have a 40-odd-year-old tub that I've had for years, and that's still good, but I've never actually want to use it, really. I don't want to use it up, and I'll probably end up dying before I ever do, so rather silly, really. But it's there when I want it, if I want it, so not a problem. But zinc white has in past has a lot of cracking issues, and the thing is that if it's heavily put on with palette knives and stuff, I can see that happening. But I wouldn't have said it was so obviously going to happen with using in small thin layers such as we are in, or such as I am in this painting. I have no problem with zinc white, and I never, if all honest, I never have had. But I do know that in the US it's an issue, and I do know that Michael Harding as such has sort of pretty much stopped trying to sell zinc white to the US, not being picked up. Anyway, so enough of that, I digress. Little taps on the end of little clumps of hairs suggest these lovely little cheek ones that are moving away. Just little groupings of hair, just leaving little areas between, and you start getting these little chunks. So you do a little grouping, say like that, a few different lengths, and then you can come in, leave a little gap, you can leave another little gap, and you start to look at little clumps forming on the short hair, and you can just see how they work away from you. They're different to these ones on here, and I think that these area here will need lightening further. And as I said, you're looking all over the place to see where the hairs need to be altered, clumped, paled off, all these different things. As this comes down here, of course, these are starting to get a lot paler down here, but we're still using that same sort of clumping method. Now some of these are also getting longer at this point as they're coming down to the side of the face, so watch for that too. A nice little dark mark. We get a little bit aggressive. If you get too much oil on like that just happened, just tap it off into a rag and go into a drier area and just load the brush. It's never a problem. Okay. Judy, good evening to you. Sarah, glad you got here. No, you've not missed too much. All I'm doing is making hair. So I'm trying to now suggest where this hair is over here, and it's almost joined into the ruff and the neck hair. So I'm just going to gently tease that away for the moment. We'll come back into that. I just want to revisit, before we get down in here, I want to revisit the lightness into this. Got a little bit more on there than I wanted, but it's not a problem. Just want to lighten it up ever so slightly. Just a couple more obvious little hairs straying over into the eye area. Just adds to that little extra bit of realism. Just one or two extra lights coming through there, not all of it. And this is where the differences between sort of loose and detailed. I mean, I hover between the two, gotta say. You know, I like to be loose, but I also like to get these hairs looking about right. So I suppose I'm never going to be as loose as some people, or just tap fur in place and it's done in a matter of minutes as opposed to hours. It really depends on what you seek to achieve. This hair is starting to get very short around here and on the face here as it's coming down into there, and you can see the difference between what we've done here and what's been done in the past. And so we can start looking at the little ridge in here, breaking up that darkness that was there, because it's not really there. We made it quite dark last week, so we're going to lose a lot of that now. So we start building the center where the nose is, where some of those lovely richer darks start to meet. Try not to lose your line. And all of a sudden we're starting to build the other side up here. And leave that little bit of dark on that side. So I'm going to make a distinction here by putting a little bit of light coming up through there, allowing me to suggest that that little light there still remains, and it'll show up more when I start working the other side. Just coming down here, less detail needed. It's shortened and it's away from me, so that works in my favor. Just bring a few here, lights, start to build a few in. Look at the hairs, look at the way they go up into the eyes through here. Like that. Little tuck under there where there's some light. Now that really starts to shine and show up. A little bit of warmth into there. Picking up different colours all the time. A little bit of warmer, a little bit more orange. Coming back up towards the side of the head. So we worked an area here a lot faster than over here, only because this is away and a little foreshortened compared to the face on section through here. And to that end, I think that's the way I would approach it and do it. Gentle little taps just to suggest a little overlapping of colour and a little bit of blending in that regard. Just at that point, a little bit more darking through here. So just going to come back in and qualify some of those little taps down through the center and the bridge. Coming down there, there is a little dark accent, a smudge as it were, down through there. I'm going to leave that there, just tap that in and just forget about that for the moment. We will address some of that in a moment, but for the moment that's fine. How many times can I use moment in a couple of sentences? Amazing. Right, I'm going to mix up a black because there are times when we're going to need to go back in with a bit of dark marks, and I'm making a general black now with umber and ultramarine blue, and just making a general dark colour. If you want to test it, you can shift it with more blue in it or more brown in it as you feel fit, making your black light warmer or cooler accordingly. It's entirely up to you how you do that. I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to work away with a few stray hairs in here, taking off the excess. I don't want to overpower any of the lights that I put in. Just the odd little dark just to strengthen some of those darks, and a few curly splatty ones that have moved out of shape. Like so. You get the odd stray dark hair out of place. Minute little taps in the same way as we've been picking up all those cool and warm colours in terms of lights. Now we're going to start using some of the darks very much in the same way. Quite a bit warmer. I'm going to add a little bit of the Indian red to one side. I chose the wrong side, not the problem. Put a bit more blue to it. Just going to warm up some of them. And I think that's too warm, so let's take that out, put that to one side. Come back with some blue in this side. Come over that a little bit. That's nice. That's just warmed up enough now. Just going to come in here and just one or two taps, because you're looking down almost into the hair. So you're not seeing length of hair, you're seeing the odd little tap into there. Just bring that down almost, but not quite to the eye. And here you can make a little line or two going back into here to strengthen some of that eye shape without losing too much of those stray little hairs that you put in. Like so. A little bit of dark round here to reinforce that section. Coming around the inside here. Now there is something to be said about the darks. Here I've got a dark made up of ultramarine blue and umber. Now that will be the general dark for all these hairs and little bits and pieces that I'm putting in. Even back down here I can reinforce this little bit of pupil here, just to give that where it may have sunk down over the week of drying, and it freshens up the look. But if I wanted to do a very different black, another way of doing that is to have some, I haven't got any on here, phthalo green. Let me just get some phthalo green out, because I do have a tub. I do have some here, I'm sure. Now there's Viridian of all colours. I don't use that anymore. I found some tubes kicking around earlier. Bear with me. I had to search for it, but I do happen to have, because I used to use a lot of this. So here we are. I'm just going to put a little splodge of it there. You can see how different that green is compared to the two cobalt turquoises. But to make a really good dark now, I can put some of that here. That's an awful green, but put that with magenta and let them mix down to a dark black. Okay, and although that looks as dark as that, now if I put that in here, it's a very different looking black. And sometimes you can use the two darks to give a very different dark. You may not be able to see it on camera, but there is a distinct change in the dark that I'm using. Now I don't need that all the way through, so I will disregard the most of that colour, come back to the one that I had that's a little bit warmer, and just come back into the dark around this eye here and underneath it here. But it's two ways of making a dark, and it really, they do work independently of each other and can be very, very useful to you. Just bring a little bit down in here, for instance. I'm going to come over the top and do some in here so that I have got a very, very similar colour to this one here. Then come back out of it and just come back in over the top here like this. And the reason I wanted to do this was because I wanted to strengthen this little eyeshadow, not eyeshadow, the sort of hairs emanating from the eye like that, and just give that a bit more strength there. And it goes to nothing there, it gets quite warm just about there. I'm going to put that in, and I will come back over that and just play around with those before the finish. Well, because those two colours, they don't make a black, they make a very dirty, unusable in a sense, purple, because you've got blues and cools in the green, and you've got the red, of course. But because they're both transparent colours, they don't emit light, so they make a very, very dark black colour. You could make a black from them in the same way as if you use oxide of red and you used phthalo blue, you could put a little bit of Indian yellow to either of those and make the black, because you've introduced the three sets of primaries in all their sort of darkest forms, as it were. Now you can see how dark that has become in there, and I can then do the same in any of these other areas where there are strong dark marks. I can just come in here and just put one or two in place, just to start suggesting that there are those, but I'm going to wait and do that when I finish doing the lights. I just wanted to do that area to start with. So I'm going to carry on working through here into these lights on top here. A little bit more orange, a little bit more light coming into some of these marks here. And this is why when you do something that hangs on my wall at the gallery, which is a large painting of two lions on the South Luangwa River, and the painting is about 54 inches by 30 inches, two massive lions on it, and people do get quite surprised when they ask how long did it take to paint, and it's sort of over 6 months work, 6 months of my life, one half of 1 year. And they wonder why it costs the money it does, because of the amount of time it takes to paint. And they're staggered that it should take so long. But oh, didn't mean to do that. But yes, sometimes paintings can take an awful long time to create. Get rid of that sword piece of paper. That's good. Well, what was that? Another message. No, Leora, I mean, it's great, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Is to, the more you look, the more you learn, the more you listen, the more you hear, and, you just get so much from it. Alright, let's carry on with the lights over the top here now. Bring some of those down. I've got so many different piles of light and dark going on now, but that's fine. I'm able to dip into each and every one of them as and when needed. A little bit of light coming around the edge of that little eye patch dark. Sometimes you can just carry on working quite fast and get areas covered. Other times you just got to sit back and take time. Coming in with a little bit more warmth through here before we come in with any other lights. A little tap into that shape, and you can alter the shapes through here quite easily. Just bring a little bit of light across some of them, breaks up that little eye stripe a little more and brings it into where I need it to be. And you can start looking at areas over here too, a little bit warmer, breaking up some of these marks, leaving a couple so you know where they're going to come, and you can add a little bit of dark in as needed further along. Just breaking out some of the edges of some of these darks. Coming across some of them. There's some in here too that could be done just to break up how that looks. Okay, looking good so far. There is that too, Leora, that people do so easily forget. Not like-minded artists such as you guys. We appreciate the time it takes to learn. But many people who don't naturally gravitate to art or painting, sort of sometimes they sort of look a little bit shocked when they see a price and wonder why it's so expensive, and we try to explain it to them. They don't fully grasp that. I think the biggest moan I've got along that lines is that when you get asked by tons of charities to donate art. I did it once or twice and I caught a cold over it because paintings were sold for silly money and they shouldn't have been. And I started changing the way I did it and only working with recognised groups, and certain ones would just come up to you and say, you know, can you donate this, can you do that, and what's the cause? Well, you know, I mean, I had one once. It was probably a worthy cause. I know there was a lot of these sort of help the heroes, and I totally agree with that. Before I go any further, help the heroes is fundamental the world over, not just in this country or in the US, but the world over. That there are many people that you know, risk their lives and paid the ultimate price, and for those who come back need help, and there are many schemes out there, and this one actually was new to me. I was at a fair and there were lots of artists there, and this guy come up to me one time, and this is not a moan, I'm not a real moan, just a case in point really, come up to me and said they've been going around lots of artists and getting them to donate work for a thing called Fishing for Heroes. Okay, I've never heard of that one, but you know, not to say it wasn't a bona fide cause. Wasn't suggesting that. It was just yet another twist on a common theme at the time. And I said that's fine. I'm more than happy to get involved. The way I do it, I said, is that I split the money with you 50-50, and you guarantee that if it doesn't sell for a certain price, it doesn't sell and it returns. And he said, well, his first thoughts was that actually no, we take all the money. I said, okay, all right, and why is it not a split? And he said, well, it's just all for the charity, it's all for a good cause. So I said, well, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, but I've got to spend, you know, X number of weeks of my life painting this where I don't earn anything from it. I've still got bills to pay. So you're expecting me to spend that time to paint, give you the painting, you make the money, and then fine, it goes to a good cause, but how do I get on with that? And he said, well, that's just the way we do it. And I said, well, what do you do? And he happened to be an accountant. So I don't know, by this time I was getting a little bit fed up. And I said to him, so if I invite you down to my home at your expense for a week, and you sit quietly in the corner of my office and do all my books for me, get my accounts ready for the government, and I say thank you very much, that was lovely of you, but there's no pay, would you do it? And he said, well, of course not. I said, well, why on earth do you expect me or other artists just to give you all their time, all their effort, and get nothing back for it? And that's where our conversation really ended. Now, I've got no problems with it, but I do have strict rules. I will help charitable groups, and I have done many times, and for many great causes, and made many friends along the way. But I do have a strict set of criteria that I will help, assuming that it's properly bona fide, and secondly that there are certain guarantees, and it's done on a 50-50 split, and that's the end of it. And I think that you know, there's no reason why that shouldn't happen, I don't think. Anyway, sorry about that, I did rant on a little bit. Has everyone switched off? I wouldn't blame you in the slightest. Anyway, we carrying on with our little fella, our lovely little fella. I'm going to give him a nice bit of light through there, and I'm not putting too much detail in here, just want it to be a little softer. on the ear going away. Maybe a little paler. Tap a little bit of cobalt into that little bit of white color that's now going to come into play over here, just to cool that down. It's a little bit too bright, so let's come back in and a little bit of fluid, a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow. Just take the white out ever so much slightly, come back in with a softer white as it were. Just a few taps over the edges into the background and a little bit of white coming down through there, pale color, and a few stray hairs that are going up and out into nothingness, into the background, like so. Maybe the odd little hair just to strengthen the thought, and then that can come down here and away into the body. So we've got that dark there. We're going to put a little bit of dark and a little bit of red into that, just to warm that value up through in there. Don't want to make that too obviously a dark. I can always go back in the other way, of course. The beauty of oil paint, you are not stuck, unlike a watercolor. Come to that, not stuck like a pastel either. You can go back into most of these things, such as the oil, and just actually work on nice strong dark in here. Very warm stray hair up through the center there, which I want to put in. Really definite line out through to the background, like so. One or two breaking off from it over here as well. That works. Yeah, I think so, Teresa. I say I wasn't having a rant. I mean, don't get me wrong. Please, I mean, that's not what I was trying to say it for. It was just that, you know, there are so many calls, and when people start looking at a painting and wondering why it costs the money it does, people don't stop to think that it takes an awful lot of time involved in creating something like this. And when you consider that, you know, I don't know what it's like in the US, Leora, but certainly in this country, tradespeople, you know, you can't get a tradesperson for under £160 a day. You know, bricklayers £200 a day. So really and truly, I don't think it's so bad. Anyway, enough of that. Let's crack on and let's get back to this fella. Can I come in with a start building up this little area around the eye and the little dart that comes up to the eye? Can I put in some more warmth in here, a bit more orange, a bit more yellow. Put that down and use that and come in underneath this eye here. Where that started to get dark, let's come in there and lessen that. A bit more orange and maybe a tap of red. Just gently into that dark and tease that out into a warmth, almost like a stain into there. And then come back to the orange and bring that down through here a little bit more. Just a few warm taps through there as well. Just the odd one, it just helps create the illusion of that warmer colour running through the whole of the fur. But you can override much of that if you need to, especially if you go too far. Not too orange as well. I think that needs to be more yellow. It's fine. It's a fine line between too warm with orange and too yellowish. Trying to find that balance. Right, let's carry on. Let's bring some of this over. And this may still need another pass on another day. Very, very long hairs appear over that side and away from his face. Okay, now I'm not getting as far with this tonight as I really had hoped. But it is what it is, I'm afraid. So I'm going to come back in and bring some lights up. A fewer amount, to be fair. It's quite yellow around there, quite reddish as well. I'm bringing some of that in around that edge of the eye. Then come back in with a few lights as needed. Finer little taps. And a few off of here too. Just little taps because the hair is very short at this point. There we go. Alright, so where do we go next? Well, I am going to work on the nose. I can come back into more of this on another day in terms of that. You're seeing an awful lot of this, and much of it is getting the degrees of tone and tonality correct, and it's a lot of repetitive work, which I don't really feel that I want to subject you all to. But I'm just going to carry on down here now and start putting in some of this information as we come down the side into the area of the cheek. A little bit more light here. You see, you put a light in and you think it's right at the time. You come back half an hour later having done some lights elsewhere, and you realize that you still need to bring up those values ever so slightly more to make it work. So I'm going to carry on and just bring these lovely little lines up through here, breaking some of that dark up ever so slightly as it comes round into here. And they start to bend over this way. There's that little dark line that we suggested earlier, and we're going to leave that and just going to come down with very much little taps of light, leaving some of those little darker bluish colours underneath. A little warm there, but they get cooler down here. So let's come in with a warm, little yellowish, but allowing little bits of colour underneath to punch through. Like so. Letting the brush tip dance over the surface almost. And I'm going to get that a little cooler now as it comes down to this side. A little bit more light on one side than the other. So let's just bring that down. Give that nose that lovely little shape. Coming down to there and just tap away. Giving it that light accent with just the odd bit of darker stuff punching through it. And there's a little more shade, it's a little cooler, a little less obvious of light through this side. Now you've got to check where that comes down in here. Lots more light on this side of the nose. We're going to bring that down through there too. So we're going to bring that down that side of the stripe, which allows that stripe to start to really punch away in terms of contrast compared to light right next to it, and that's what that's all about, that lovely little bit of contrast. Just see a very, very faint line down through there. We'll make that happen, and we can then make that lose out to some of these other colors up in here. Just gently fade that away, like so. Just check this area here. I think we're okay with it. Yeah, I think that's fine. Right, where are we? Let's catch up. Well, yeah, I absolutely, totally agree, Leora. I really do. Wendy, you like to see part 3. You could be in a minority of 1, possibly 2, possibly 3. There's 3 of you. Oh, 4. Okay, well, we'll see how we go. I'm enjoying it, I gotta say, it's a lot of fun. But I think if I did do a part 3, I'd have to do a little bit more work at home ahead of time to bring everything up to speed. I'm just going to pop over to this side here. There needs to be a little bit more dark happening on this stripe, this eye stripe. A little bit of a spot there and there. And then just make some of this come away. Tapping off some excesses. Bring that down through there. And I've got this one here. Got a few dark marks in here just to start suggesting 1 or 2 of those. And I've got to be careful now because I'm still bouncing around all over the shop. And it is sort of dangerous in that sense because you can very easily sort of just forget where you are and just lay your hand upon a mark, dark or something, and wreck it. So just be aware of where you are working if you start to add more details such as this. Little face marks, little spots that will become more obvious when he gets older, or she. I don't even know what sex this one is. I'm honest, I have no idea. Just put in 1 or 2 little darker marks in 1 or 2 of these places. Not much, just a little tap. It's a case of looking, always seeing something and just trying to correct it as best you can at the time, or else it could easily become forgotten. So if you see something, do just take the time, I think, and stop and repair. Now I'm going to come in here with that lovely little light around the eye. And that really sets that up. Blends in a little more here, comes down towards that tear duct, and then we've got a bit more white catching the light, unlike this side which is cooler. I'm going to bring that in there, just take that up and bring that light into that point there, and as that comes away there, working well. I think it's going quite nicely. Now I'm going to add in, and I don't know if I keep looking at this, I'm going to add in some more light on the eye. Breathing in quite a bit because I don't want to mess it up. And a little bit of warmth into that too, a little bit too cool there. I'm going to give that a little bit of a light warmth. That's better. Very little ice around there, little wetness. Okay, that's fine. There's a little stray hair or something there. That's very, very understated. There's actually a hair coming down through there which has been missed. Bit of the tear duct in there. Very, very faint marks. And that chases right underneath the eye like so. And maybe just a little brighter. One or two of those just helps those eyes a little bit more, I think. A bit more of a glug. Okay, now then, look at something down here, but I need to bring some more background down now. What I've done is I want to use some of the colours that we've been using this evening just to come in here and lighten up, maybe even put a little bit of warm colour, but really lighten this up through here. Bring a little bit of green into that, a little bit of that light turquoise. Again, this is a Winsor & Newton colour. I'm going to bring that in and gently fuse that area to the one that's already dry. But I want to come in, the reason it's very, very light at this point, but there's a lot of dark hairs off of the side of the head. So I'm going to bring that in, lose it there, take it away, and gently, just gently prise them together with my fingers, and then take that all the way down to there. Lighter if I want to, and make that a really nice statement through there. Adds a sense of that's where the light's coming from too. You don't have to stay with that all the way through, it just what the photograph suggests to me. I'm going to come back in with a bit more dirt, a little bit more grubby colour in here, bring that up to around there, and let that come in against the muzzle. But I'm not going to come down too much further with that. Okay, I'll just gently fuse some of these areas together. I don't want it looking like a patchwork quilt. Just looking at that over the back there, I think that's fine. I'm looking at it and it should be quite light because the and quite warm because this is going to be in shade. So I'm going to bring a little bit of warmth, a little bit of light, and a little bit more yellows into this on this side. Reworking this area a little bit. Doesn't matter I'm going over here because I can go back over here. That really is not an issue. I'm just scumbling over the top of the dry stuff now, and just gently bring that into the back of the ear down there. And even if you scumble over some of your hairs, that really is not a problem, because you can do this quite happily and know that when you come back into it, you got almost like having lights in trees. You've got, even I'm doing it deliberately now, and look at, I'm putting some of that light in, getting rid of the outside shape. Now you've got light coming into the back there and fusing with the hairs that are underneath. It works very, very well. Just a gentle scumble off and finish. Really don't need to do any more than that. Now you've got that lovely fusion there, and you can put some of the lights and the darks in there, but cooler ones, cooler blues. Instead of the warm colours, there's these cool blues, darker amber colours that you can see in the neck here, and that will work really well. And what it's done is it's really started to throw out this animal. And yeah, so anyway, that's that bit for now. It's probably all I will do to the background this week, and we can start working in some of these other areas very, very soon. So with that said, I'm going to look at some of these darks off of the side of the head here, and they extend way out into some of these areas here. Lots of little fine dark hairs like so. Got a sneaky suspicion I might make this into a little print if it turns out. Be nice to see this out. You can only ever sell one original, but you can keep selling lovely prints or limited edition prints, something like that. We're really nice. But there we've got that lovely extension of lovely little hairs. I'm going to put one or two up in here because we are now at that sort of stage. Not finished, but we can actually add a little bit more detail. Some of these darks as well as some of the lights that are going directly out into the background of the animals. Fewer on the top than there are on the cheeks and the side of the face. But nonetheless, there are still some there. Some that are out beyond here too. Just little ghostly apparitions of dark shapes of the fur. They get a little shorter coming through here. We can put those in, little short ones. And maybe not as dark or as solid, but nonetheless there are one or two there. Not so easy putting down unless it's dry, so you might want to wait for the paint underneath, this background to dry off a little bit, and then go in with more fluid and put your colours back in along that lines further on down the road. And put a little bit of dark in one or two of these areas here, just to mess up some of the shape here. Lovely warm dark hairs. And a cat this age, one or two hairs really can make almost a stripe. Doesn't take a lot. Okay, now let us go back into this mark here, which has lost quite a bit. So I'm going to bring that in and just strengthen the dark on here. And you can't really see too much in the way of hair, but you do see some little undulations like so, and that will just come off as a very little few taps of hairs as it comes round to the side of the mouth. We'll make more of that later on. Yes, I think so, Leora. I think it would be quite a nice thing to do. Right, let us carry on. Now, I got quite dark in here last week, but I'm going to use two of the greens and the lights that I did. Just going to reinforce the nose, as it were, coming up around through there. And I'm going to come in with that shape through there, catching a bit of light. Okay, a little bit of a nub of colour dark there. Now I am more concerned about painting shapes as opposed to painting a nose. I'm painting shapes within the nose. And there's a little sort of staining of the fur up through here. It just suggests that it is very subtle. It does darken off that area there, and then it gets quite light as you get a little area of shade coming down through there to suggest a little mark there. So it's shapes, little shapes that build the structure. and it's into those shapes that you end up creating the image, as it were, or the suggestion of the image. You're looking at little bits here and little bits there that just create the subtleties that end up making it. I'm going to come in now with a little lighter part through here on the nose, but it is very much a little bit of a light. It's not a white. Never get confused with lights and whites. The value is way off of a white. Just working that away. Got a little bit of light coming around on the side of that. I think mine is a little bit further out, so I'm going to change the drawing just a little bit. I'm going to come down here with that and take that, tuck that out there. And then I just want to put in more dark in here. I think my drawing is a little bit out, so I'm going to come in there with that mark. So very, very dark, and then gives it a shape like that. So that's better, and amends what wasn't quite right. Good, okay. A little bit of a dark shadow there. And to make some of these dark shadows work and look correct, you need to take some of that greeny grey colour which I used. Let's take some of that out, a little bit of violet into that, put a bit of light to it. So it's not a light dark, it's a pale greenish colour. Take that into there, and check this, take that down into there. Subtle taps. Doesn't take much of a tap on this to lose the whole shape of the nose. So just be aware of that when you're putting a little bit of light in, make sure it's where it needs to be. Okay, for now I think that I'm quite happy with that. There is a very subtle shadow there which I'm going to put in, but I'm going to go into it with some lights. So I'm going to come in with some of the lovely white colour, but I'm going to use a little bit of yellow first and foremost. More white than anything else, but it's not pure white. I'm just going to bring that in and start looking at the side here, using that dark that I just put in there to come away and up through there. Got that little dark there, accent, just leave that in place. There is a little dark coming down there. I'm going to leave that, so just come up to that line that you can probably just about make out, and then all the way through here. Okay, now while I've got that colour on, it's considerably lighter at the end, but I'm just going to put in 1 or 2 taps over that muzzle here. Just 1 or 2 lights. Just a little bit more light down through that side too. Okay. I haven't got that far yet, mate. You're correct, but I haven't actually got that far down. We're getting there, Ben. We're getting there, mate. So I'm going to come back in with some little greenier colours on this side. You can see I suggested the green last time out, so I'm going to come in and lighten this up with a very, very soft, almost a glaze at this stage, because it's still dark enough to come over with lights and freshen it. But it just gives me that slightly shadow side to the cat that I'm seeking. And I'm going to come in with that little bit of green. I keep seeing that green in there. I'm going to put that in. can always come back out again if I'm not sure if it should stay there or not. A little bit of green around here just to cool it off, and that's just a little dash of colour there scratched on, and it probably will almost certainly all go before we get to the end of the painting, certainly on the mouth, but there will still be the odd little bit popping through that will allow you to see it, and it will, the brain will pick up the colour. I've just done the same there on the edge of the mouth. So let's just move down to the area that Ben is on about, which is here and here, I think is what he's saying. Cheers, Teresa. Sorry you got to go, but lovely to have you while you was here. We will carry on. And I'm going to use that same colour coming down through here. And it's not all of the colour, it's not all of the lights. I'm coming up in stages. So take that through there, take that down. We've got a lot of dark and other colours coming in here, so now my colour of that same colour is just going to be the odd tap, because I want a lot of this orange still, albeit washed out a little bit, to poke through, like so. Okay, and we're going to do the same on this side. We're going to bring some of this colour up now, take it out and away. There are lots of darks, and we're going to put one or two of those back in because there's insufficient there at the moment. Okay. Now then, let's look at some oranges into the corners before we get to that stripe. So let's come in, let's warm this whole area up. Taking it down into that corner there, so it does round it out. There's a little less of it showing here, but we're going to still put a little bit in here just to warm that area out through there. Then we can come back in with our darks, it's not a problem. I do want to put a little tap or two I've just seen up in here, just the odd little tap of warmth back in there. Just checking that lovely warm colour in there as well. Don't want to lose that. And let's take a little bit more out through here. That's good, that's good. Let's come in with some cools now under this chin. Let's darken this chin off. And that was just a really scratchy mark. I just stuck that in, bang. That is a nice dark area. Let's do the same in here. Let's darken some of this off. Bit of blue, bit of grungy purple that we've had before. Just make sure we get a little bit of dark going on here. We don't want to make the mouth black. As I've got it, it will be lightened at this stage now, and it will be lightened around here. So we're going to have a little bit of dark coming, emanating from there to soften that area and that area there. And if we overdo it, we can always come back in. It's not a problem. But that area there comes right the way across into this one. You see a little bit more on that side than you will of this side. If you look at that, you've got a nice roundness on this one because it's abrupt, it's foreshortened, it's not foreshortened, it's face on. But if you look from that side, you'd see more. Because you're looking from this side slightly, you're seeing a bit more of that curvature of the mouth at that point. So now I'm going to build, that's a little bit too wet. Come back in with some colour, freshen that out, dry it out a little bit. Bit more pigment, less fluid, and we can come back in and we can just tap in some of these areas of the mouth, and some of these will get a bit whiter. I'm not going to go over all of it where I need to right now. This is almost like a second layer. Going to bring some of those down into this area so they start to mingle, start to merge. Like so. These two are a little bit clumsy. Not a problem. Stab them off. I'm going to put a bit of a bluish, dirty bluish colour furthermore into here, just to take that back down. And take that, I want to make a shape of that dark in there, because that does have a little dark in there and a little dark over the top there. Okay. Now then, where are we? Before I come into any of this area, I want to come in with slightly bigger rigger. I may as well, it's there. Let's just come in and work this out. Under here, I think. No, it's under there. Come in with that nice warm glaze of colour under this fur here. Now it's a little splodgy, and I'm not worried about that one little bit, because we've got a lot of colours to build into there. And we're going to take that all the way back up through to here. Taking it off into there. And we've got lots of little spots to start building for, so I'm just gently dragging that down and over areas. You can see it is just scribbled on, but it will be refined. And I want to make some of this a bit brighter. Maybe a little bit more yellow into that mix. Bit of that orangey yellow that we had, and some of the real yellow we've got. Let's just change that value. It's almost the same value actually. So we're going to come back into there and freshen it up with a bit more yellow. Like so. Let that come away. It's like a little bib, and that actually extends down through here. We can actually almost suggest that coming down there, but just that little bit of light in there. Put it on, take it off, as it were, but at least it's a suggestion. Now we've got some of that cooler. I'm going to put some of that green back in. I have really come to like this very light turquoise, but to that I'm putting in a little bit of the yellow, so it's turning it away from the turquoise green and to a sort of a funny green color, icy green color. Now that may be too much green. I'm going to put a few in just to test it. I think it's okay for the moment. It gives a nice contrast to those lovely colors we got in. I'm going to put one or two into the chinny chin chin, like so. Be one or two into this side here, giving a nice cool recession of the muzzle as it goes away. And well, we're going to just bring that down through there. So we've got a bit of a yellow, bit of a green, bit of a cool, bit of a warm going on. Just one or two in there. And let that set up, and we can now carry on working with the rest of the side of the muzzle. More orange mix coming in, and it's a bit of a dirty orange mix, but I'm just going to bring that in a little bit warmer than should, and just put some dark, dirty darks into that. Up into here, there's some one or two just tapping away down into that area that we had just now. becoming warmer and yellower around here. Okay. Now I think I am happy to just bring in a bit of light, I think, through here, quite pale. Even that green would work, actually. Down through there and into there. Then I want it to suddenly get quite a bit darker. I'm looking at, and that is wrong there, so I've got to take that off and just deliberately take that down there, because I've got a lot of light but a lot of dark going into that point. I want to make sure that works. I'm going to put a little bit more dark through there. It's actually one of Mum's spots, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to take that to there. Bit of green into that red now will kill it off a little bit. Just take that to light so. Now I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to leave that quite a stark shape and something a little bit more definite there, as opposed to just all of this up here. Just a definite light and dark accent as we go forward. Very thin, and we can actually do so much with that next time. But these lovely reds and green shifts on two colours, going warm to cool, green to red, because they're complementary, they kill each other off in differing degrees. Now I'm not trying to put the spots of Mum behind. I'm probably more suggesting that there may well be some sort of foliage in the background here, grasses, greens, shrubs, you know, sort of African bits and pieces. So we're coming into maybe some stronger greens towards the foreground. Who knows what it is? It doesn't really matter. It's more suggestive. Okay, I'm going to leave that like that. Clean that brush out. I don't think I'll be using it again tonight. Cheers, Sue. Yeah, no, it's great of you to appreciate that. They do take an incredible amount of work. This is why I've seldom done them as a main piece in demonstrations or anything at all. They just take an age to do, and people more often than not get bored looking. Anyway, I hope you're not getting bored. That's the main thing. Let's just come in here with the first of some lights. I'm going to wait for this to dry for next week, I think, before I come back in and put some real highlights on. There is quite a bit of light just under the chin here, going down through there. We'll just suggest it this week, and if we do a third week on this, then when this goes out tomorrow, guys, and you've watched it and what have you, then just put in the comments underneath whether you want to see a third week on this or something different. And I'll be happy to oblige the majority vote, as it were. And some of these hairs are going to be a lot longer and fluffier and clumpier, is what I meant to have said. They're clumping together a little bit more, but some of the outer ones are going to be very, very fine. Now this is not the edge. They will come out a little further. It may be that I will dye. What I might do is this. I might well just come in with some of that warm colour that I had and just tap in a little bit like that. So actually I bring some of that back in like this, and then I'll take it back out once it's dry. Right, okay, let us continue. going to cool off some of this down here and just going to start suggesting where some of these lighter values are starting to come in, and then come around, and we're going to bring some of those cooler ones up into this area here now. They're going all over the show, but we've got lovely lights, lovely cool lights against warm darks in this point. It's really nice to see this, being able to work it in this way. I'm already sticking my finger in the edge of the paint here, so I do need to watch that a lot. Little clumps of fur here where it's obviously it's been probably suckling from mum, so it's got a little bit of clump hair, dried milk at that point. I may have to change one or two of these marks later, but for the moment I think we're fine. Just going to take that off there and just lose some of the edge there, because it will get very, very bright very, very quickly next time round. So for the moment this is all sort of building up the next layer on the cat under the chin before the real highlights go on. And in fact we've still got some to do up in here. It's by no means finished in terms of final hair lights and darks. We will be putting some more values into this. But as Sue was saying just now, that you get to see why some of my wildlife paintings take as long as they do. There's an awful lot of work goes into them to make them to a point where I'm happy with them and that I feel that I can sell them on. Taking that through there, just giving that a little bit more light there and make that go that way, which it should do. And then bring that down. There's a lot darker and a lot lighter. Trying to get that value about right there. I'm going to scrap a little bit of blue into there. And just drag that into there and drag some of the warmth back into that area. But be careful you don't get too wet with paint and start really messing up, because it can easily happen at this point. So I'm just looking at where the lights are. I want to have the suggestion where the mouth parts there, but it is almost lost. Like so. A little bit of the Joan Brilliant just coming out here. To the edge of the muzzle. Sides of the cheeks going into the darks, then the darks, and that will come out and radiate out next time through. Starting to look at some of the yellows that are coming out from here, the stronger yellows. Longer hairs, using some more of that Joan Brilliant in here, enough to make it move. And I think before next week comes I better order some more riggers. I think at this rate I'm going to be using quite a few of them. But yeah, I think there's a bit more orange, a bit more warmth to that. Okay, we're starting to build, it's starting to look nice. A little bit more fluid to some of that mixture. I want to actually turn some of these down and around. Best as I can, I am leaving areas underneath that are still darker to come through these lighter shades, but at the same time, if I overdo it in that fashion, I can always go back in and add warmer colour should I need to do so further on. It's not a big deal. Just want to put in a bit more warmth in here. Taking some of that up through here. It's not that orange, to be honest with you, so let's just take that down and light that up with a bit more yellow in there. Mixture. Okay. Right. Now that does look a bit awkward on that side without all the other light hairs coming in. So let's just try it before we finish tonight, just to bring some of these lights in to make that look a little bit better. So I'm going to use some titanium white, and I'm going to use some of that Joan Brilliant and a little bit of normal medium yellow, which I've got on my palette for the first time for a long time. Happened to find a tube, I thought I'd squeeze a little bit out, I don't know why, but I did. So it's there to use, I may as well use it, so there we are. So I'm going to just bring in, not the light colour, because it will get lighter, this is just the next suggested layer, as it were. And I'm leaving little gaps that could be little darks, or they could be little dark spots appearing. Okay. Now then, that blue colour is running out a little bit. I've got to bring that down, and around here it's coming into his chin. Let's just soften that change there, bring some of that over, and that will disappear and go into his chin, which needs to be just a little bit deeper in one or two places going off here. And then this wants to get a little cooler, but nonetheless there under here. There's just a small subtle adjustment of the colour value under there to show we've got that where it should be. Okay. I must turn my phone off. Keep getting these email notifications. I thought I turned every notification off, but not that one. So forgive me for that. We will have it turned off for next week. Probably doesn't worry you, but it annoys me every time I get concentrated and all of a sudden I get a ping ping in the back of my ear. I'm going to bring in a little bit more light in here now, which is going to suggest as that comes right up to there, and another message. Let's bring that light into there, just give that lovely, and it almost joins together that you can hardly see where one starts and stops, as it were. I will say that the sort of these lovely long hairs have always been my Achilles heel. I think every wildlife artist has the same dilemma when it comes to these things, and they never change. That's always a problem, and it has to be said, it's the last thing that I do. Starting to build some of the lights into this now, but I will leave the majority of them until next week. Yeah, I'll do a third week, guys. It seems to be overwhelmingly that people want to see a third week. Although we are losing a few people this week. I think we got up to about 18 or 19. We're down to 14 now. So maybe the second week was too much. Who knows? I'll do a third week anyway. I'm enjoying it, so it really doesn't matter to me in that regard. Okay, we've established what that weirdness over there was, so let's just come back over this way and let's just work on some of this over the back here now. So I'll pretty much work my way into a hole with this side here, because I've done too much down here, and I'm going to start messing out, and the side of my hands are picking up lots of the paint underneath, so I've got to be a little careful. But some of these lovely hairs are going to be really cracking out through light. So let's just look at taking that. Let's put that down a little bit so we can see what we've got going on. And we're going to use a lot of fluid, I think. I'm just going to suggest some of these darks with a very fine amount of paint going on. More cool, more cobalt blue in there than black, and just come in with a few fine flicks working their way up to and around the back of the ear, because his lovely little mane is going to be with him for some time to come, or her. And these beautiful darks, we can put these cooler ones in first, but we can come back in with some really long ones in darks as we feel the need to further on. We're just setting this up, and that's coming all the way down through there like so. Okay. Alright, I think we're pretty much there for tonight, if I'm honest. I confess I'm getting a little tired. So, and I think the audience is waning us slightly. We've lost a few. So maybe we will pick this up again next week. I have really enjoyed tonight. It's been a lot of fun doing this fella, and I may do a little bit more to him in the week. I may just carry on as I've been doing and just build, and you see the full thing that way, instead of me sort of jumping in and doing a bit more and then you saying, well, how did you get to that bit, as it were. So I'll probably just leave it as it is till next week and come back in and carry on playing with this fella and letting it build up. Thanks, Judy. I appreciate that. As I say, it's you know, it's another 2 hours of painting, and there's still a lot of work to do around here. Highlights up on the back. Highlights generally, maybe a little bit more orange and warmth down through here. As I look at the original and I look at what I've got. So yeah. There's still a lot to play for, but I think we're on the right track. Thanks, Wendy. So, right, I'll catch each and every one of you next Monday. But don't forget, patrons, please. Friday night is your night. You get to get your own stream on the Patreon. So look forward to seeing you all at 7. I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. Open to suggestions. We did a pastel last week, so maybe if you want an oil or a watercolor or something, you just say, let me know. And yes, Friday there will be a film out. I don't know what it's going to be yet. It's probably a sort of time-lapse version of one of the videos. I think I just did the Impala in oil for the Rose Madder patrons. I think that what I'll be doing is doing a time-lapse version, a short version for about half an hour or so, or just under, for YouTube on Friday. Cheers, Derek. I'm glad it's working out for you. Take care, everybody. I'll let everybody say goodbyes, and I will hope that everyone stays safe, and I'll catch you all next week. Until that time, I take care, everyone. Be good. Happy painting. Bye-bye.